In my last video, I created mean and standard deviation, showing you how to use formulas to do those things. This time around, I'm going to show you how to do a graph using error bars, standard deviation as error bars, and as well as creating trend lines and finding R-squared. Since we have our data, we typically only want to graph your process data. In my case, it's going to simply be the mean. So I'm going to highlight temperature. I'm going to hit Command and hold it down, and then highlight the mean. This is going to allow me to graph these two, just these two columns, and not my raw data in the middle. Come up to the charts at the top. Usually you want to use a scatter plot because you don't want your lines connected, generally speaking. As you notice, I have temperature on the bottom and my mean across the time. I'm going to make it big enough that we can see it. Whoa, that was a little too big. Okay, so we're going to move it up. Whoa. Move this up so we can see it. Okay, so now it's big enough that we can see it. A few things to notice. One, there's only one set of data here, so my legend is basically useless, so I'm going to delete that. If you've got multiple lines on the same thing, then you definitely don't want to delete that, but for our purposes, there's only one set of data here. First things to always notice anytime you have a chart or a data, you want to come up to, come on. I'm going to come here to chart layout. You want to make sure that you have a chart title. Anytime you have a title, you always want to make sure that it says, I'm going to call this graph 1, average oxygen we'll call it average amount of oxygen produced. Okay, you'll notice that my axes don't have labels though. I'm going to add the axis on the X and on the vertical so that I can now add titles to them. Make sure that when you add a title, you're always labeling what this is, and you always add the units to it as well. Keeps trying to be annoying today. This is average amount of OX oxygen in milliliters. Now, my graph doesn't really tell me what it's about, so I could say average amount of oxygen produced at different temperatures. The more specific your title is, the better, generally speaking. Okay, so now we want to use our standard deviation. We want to create error bars for our data. I'm going to click on my data points, and I'm going to click error bars. It's important that we click on error bar options. It gives me Y error bars. I'm going to click customize, make sure it's Y and not X. And I'm going to have a cap, and I want both up and down. But we want customized values. Instead of having a specific standard deviation, we want to create customized using the standard deviation that our data has given us. You get these customized error bar positive value and negative values. I'm going to use the same positive and negative values for both. I'm going to highlight the standard deviation numbers that I have and click on that. For the negative, do the same thing. This is going to change my error bars in my actual document to be specific to the number that's given here. We can easily see just by looking at the error bars, these numbers are not very well done, that they're way too far apart considering the amount of means. There's lots of overlap in the standard deviation. That's a good thing to put into your analysis report for your evaluation of your data. And the other thing that we can add are trend lines. Again, if we click on that data, come up to Format Chart again, I can add a trend line. You can add trend line options, or you can simply add the trend line. I'm going to go to trend line options. I want a linear trend line, so I'm going to click on linear. If I click on options, you're going to see two sets down here. One is the r-squared value, the other is the equation. Both of them are usually displayed on a chart anytime you add a trend line. This gives us obviously the slope. We can see the negative trend line that's happening here. But it also, the r-squared value gives us a value of how well our trend line actually matches our data. The closer r-squared is to 1, the better our data matches our trend line. R-squared at 0.8 is not terrible. It's definitely not great either. It's a little low for what we would like to have, but it's still not a terrible trend line, giving some credibility to our data, as we can actually see that there is a negative correlation occurring, and that negative correlation is okay. Thanks for stopping by today. Hope to see you next time.